everybody. Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with Kathie Hixon-Smith, aka Pony. Great to have you here, Kathie. As always, starting from the beginning, we like to get to know a little bit about your past. How did you get started in music, and particularly on bass?
So I started off playing the violin for just a little stint, and then my dad bought me a guitar, a $5 guitar from a garage sale. And I started that at like 14, 15, just self-taught, or I had friends who would show me tabulature. And then at 18, I was like, I really want a bass. I was really into goth music, and I started seeing like female players, and that was like, ooh, that's really cool. And I just loved that whole imagery. The first band I saw with a female bass player was Jack Off Jill, which is a band from Florida. And then in System of the Down, or not System of the Down, I can't think of it. But, you know, in that, like, metal kind of era, I can't even, I feel terrible that I don't remember. He was another one, so I was just really interested in that, and I loved how bass sounded and what you could do with it. So, and to me it felt, oh, you got 4 strings, a little easier to manage for me, I felt like, because I have big hands. So, yeah, that's how I got started. So at 18, I started playing bass.
Got you. And did you pursue any formal training, or are you self-taught?
I started off self-taught, and then at 18, I started taking lessons. And then around 21, I started studying with Eric Fratsky, who is from Happy Apple, and he's very well accomplished. I knew I needed to know theory. I just didn't connect all the pieces very well, and I played by ear. So, like, I understood chords, and I understood how you needed to make the bass fit within that. I knew that the bass needed, you had to know the downbeat and how to connect the guitar and the drums together. So I understood that. So, yeah.
Got you. Well, and as you are, of course, an integral part of Ryan and Pony. And with that, also, you bring a lot of other talents to the duet and any group you play with, because you do vocals, you play guitar, you do keys. So you're a multiple threat in that sense. Did you also just the rest of this stuff self-taught as well, or just is this kind of like on-the-job learning?
Some of it was, you know, starting out was self-taught, just mainly because of Suzuki method I could hear. Well, so that wasn't so much self-taught because I learned from my violin teacher. And then on the job, you know, like some people called me out on things like, hey, you don't really know this, or you need to know this. This is very important to know, like your scales, and you need to know. And then Ryan also, you know, honed in on things for me too. He's a guitar teacher, and he's just a phenomenal music teacher, and he can explain things in a way that is so easy to understand. So that helped me a ton. So being in melismatics, and I even started taking lessons from him before melismatics. When I played, Ryan and I met in a band, we played for Mark Mallman, and that helped a ton. And then Eric Fratsky also helped me a lot too.
Part of what I'd noticed in some of the videos I've watched, that you guys tend to kind of alternate instruments. See, I've even seen Ryan playing bass at times as well. So you looked just as comfortable on drums as you did, you know, in front of the mic, or you know, playing guitar. So, I mean, it's kind of, you guys really mix it up so it didn't look like it was just you only had the one thing going for you. You've got so many things. So I'm glad you mentioned, again, in addition to Ryan and Pony, the melismatics. How did that come about?
So shortly after Ryan and I got married, their guitar player, they were thinking about getting another member. They wanted to add a keyboard player. Yeah, touring was kind of becoming, I don't know exactly the entire story, but there was some complication. You know, things weren't quite working out. So Ryan's like, well, why don't we just add you as a keyboard player, and that'll help fill out the sound. And the guitar player was like, no, I don't want to play in a band with a female. So then that, I know, and that happened a lot. A lot of people did not at that time. It was like 2005. I mean, that would happen. You know, either people really wanted to or they didn't want to. So then I ended up playing. I ended up taking that role of keyboards and guitar. So yeah, that was 2005 when that happened. So yeah. And I always wanted to be in the melismatics. I always loved the melismatics. Anytime I'd go see a concert, I was like, this is so cool. The songs are so well constructed, and and gosh, I really want to be in a band like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up doing it. So I auditioned. And in fact, I flubbed my first audition. Like I was so stressed out. I had way too much going on. I was in college, and I didn't prepare as well as I should have. I started crying at my first audition. No one ever talks about that, but they knew I could deliver, though, because they had seen me in other bands, and they knew. And it was just more of a pressure thing. So I went and played with them again, and it was fine.
It is something I think a lot of people kind of take for granted, and that is how in music there has been progress. And it kind of, I'm going to say, parallels social progress because, for example, African American players had great limitations on them for decades. You know, as the civil rights movement was happening, there were certain places they could play, but they couldn't even stay in a hotel. They had to have, limited places. One bass player I spoke to, Reggie Workman, he's 82. He played with Monk and Coltrane and all these cats in the jazz scene in New York City. You know, he was recounting there was a black musicians union and there was a white musicians union. And they couldn't cross gigs. They couldn't play in Broadway and they couldn't get the better clubs. And with women entering again in the music scene, I think a lot of times you had to be kind of, tough right off the bat to be able to shake off, what do you mean you don't want to play with a woman? I mean, especially you think 2005, that seems really still recent to have such a backward concept because, I mean, we could rattle off between the Go-Go's and, Jocelyn Chanton, all kinds of players that were there at the time that were blazing trails that you'd go, catch up with the times here, buddy. This isn't the 50s, but it still could be out there. So that's just wild to hear.
Yeah, I know. It's surprising, but it happened. It might even still happen. Probably not as much. I think the Twin Cities has a really strong women's music group, and they're very supportive of each other, and they'll call things out, and I think that's really good.
Oh yeah,
you can put it out there.
Yeah, well, we'll never make progress if it's not brought kind of to the attention of people and make them at least think and go, hey, wait, why is this a problem?
Yeah.
It's crazy. But coming back to Ryan and Pony, you guys had an album release last year, Moshi Mushi, which is kind of interesting as it's Japanese for hello. So tell us a little bit about that project.
Yeah. Oh, man. It was so fun. Yeah, it was just like once Ryan and I had a child, melismatic started to go, on a back burner. And we're like, well, we're not going to give up, because it was like our drummer had other things going on. Sure. And so did our bass player. So we're like, well, we're not going to give up. We're going to keep going and we're going to keep writing songs. And that was fun. He and I, when we work together, it's just so easy, like unusually easy. I don't know. You hear about bands and you hear like, oh, there's all this conflict. And I've been in other groups and I'm like, constructing a song or whatever or rehearsing is so hard. But with Ryan, it was just like, here's our demo. Here's my demo or whatever, and what do you want to put to it? And Ryan's so open to feedback, and yeah, so seriously, it was a little too easy, and like we just need to keep doing it, and we do. It just probably took a span of 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, but it's the only thing was just having a small child. Will be the most important thing. So I think that was the only delay, and that's okay because the other thing is we didn't have the pressure to crank out a whole bunch of songs either. It was just like we could take our time and craft them and make them good.
Well, and the recording dynamics have also changed so much that now you can, especially with a lot of people are recording at home or remotely, and kind of the days of showing up at a studio and having to hammer out, have everything ready and hammer it out in a week or so. You can kind of take some time and you work it to how you want it. And even if you're sending it off to get mastered or something, it still is much easier with a schedule. And certainly anybody who's ever dealt with having a child in the household, I mean, it does change. You're happy if you're able to get a good night's sleep, much less create something.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, coming on to how are you getting your sound? What kind of gear are you playing on?
Okay, so I play like a Fender Jazz bass. I love that bass. It's got this like nice wooden warm tone, but yet it can still be bright. I'm a fan of the Sans amp because you can play with the drive. You can pull the bass out and make it very prominent, which I think really works well in Ryan and Pony. And I got that idea from our bass player from the Melismatics because I was always like, gosh, his bass tone is so good. I'm like, what do you use? And I look at his pedals, and he played a Sans amp, and it's a direct box too. So when you tour, it's just like, it's plugging in, you're good to go. I also I use my, like, another distortion that I'll use is Z-Vex. We have a Z-Vex endorsement through the Melismatics, but I that same guitar pedal I use for this as well. So
very nice. And do you have a preference in strings?
I wish I used to. I like Dia Dark. So, but I used to play around. I used to be like into round wound. Now I'm not into round wound. So yeah, I don't know, not really.
Yeah. It's all good. And one area that often gets overlooked, instrument cables. Any particular preferences there?
Someone just sent me an awesome instrument cable. Let me look real quick.
Sure.
Ray Decker? That's who it is, Ray Decker. So I'm going to show you this really cool instrument. This guy. Look at this. It's got like a wooden...
Oh, nice.
I don't know what this is called, but I should know. But it's really cool blue cable. I don't know. I love it.
Looks heavy duty.
Heavy duty. Yeah, I think it could handle the road.
Yeah. About how long is it?
Oh, it's got to be at least 20 feet.
Yeah, it looks pretty sizable there. Very nice.
5, so yeah, pretty sturdy. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's kind of interesting because as people go through different phases in music, I think most of us start out with whatever was least expensive or was available at our local music store. And I remember I bought I started playing in a rock band when I was in 5th grade, and I had enough money to get a 3-foot cable, and it was a coil one. So I had to stay really close to my amp, and my amp was pretty terrible because it came out of a pawn shop, and lo and behold, it probably went to the pawn shop because it had some faulty wiring. So if you touch the on and off toggle switch, it would shock you. So we learned that you had to turn the amp on with the tip of your tennis shoe, or else you were going to get slightly electrocuted in the process. But, as time went by, I've fortunately been able to progress to better gear. But instrument cables, again, sometimes it's the economy of it, sometimes it's the length of it. Durability, if you're going to be on the road, makes a huge difference. And not having to then search for a music store somewhere else and get another one when this one is failing on you. So that's always good. So looking also ahead, we're kind of on the tail end of the pandemic, hopefully light at the end of the tunnel. What's in the future for Ryan and Pony or the Melismatics?
So there's nothing booked with Melismatics, we're going to do a replacements tribute.
Okay.
And I'll play guitar. That's happening in October, late, like the 20th range. Mm-hmm. I should start the date, but it should be posted on the site or on Facebook. That's always really fun. We always have guest singers come up and sing a replacements tune, and we're the backup band. And then I do play bass for a guy named Mark Malman, September 18th. I always loved that. That's where I had it was my next stepping stone. It was the second band I played bass for.
Gotcha.
It was like my first professional gig. I was like, oh, I'm getting paid. Yeah. Exciting. And it really grew me a lot as a player. Sure. Playing along to a piano with a whole bunch of chord changes, it was pretty, I was like, whoa, this is kind of hard. And lots of, just really cool note choices and where you would play them on the bass. That was pretty cool. So there's that. So hopefully we get a Ryan and Pony soon, though, because we didn't have any shows, to promote this record. So yes, book us, somebody. All right, well, here's the other thing that's affecting it though too is that Ryan's going on tour with Soul Asylum, so he'll be gone till from August to mid-September. So that affects things, but still, there's all this other book. So and maybe we just got to get on it too.
I hear you. Well, and for so many people, especially anybody that released an album in the pandemic, the usual pattern of releasing an album and then supporting it touring, nobody could do that. They could release, but then they couldn't follow up on it. And so pretty much everybody that I spoke to was like, yeah, we let the album fly last year and we did nothing after that, So it is very challenging. If people want to stay on top of what you're doing, they can look at ryanandpony.com for what you've got going on, melismatics.com for that. And then I found you on Instagram at kponyhs.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We got Instagrams too. We've got, Ryan and Pony Instagram. Those are more active than our website.
Okay.
Melismatics Instagram and Melismatics Facebook and Ryan and Pony Facebook. But I would say the Ryan and Pony Facebook and Instagram is pretty active.
Yeah. For most part, social media tends to have the quickest information when it comes to that, because maintaining a website and adding in stuff is a little more tedious. And so if and when something does come up, people can usually find that information very quickly there. Well, Kathie, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and sitting down and chatting with us and telling your story. Folks, make sure you check out Ryan and Pony, the Melismatics. All kinds of interesting stuff. We'll hope to see you touring soon at a venue near everybody. Otherwise, in the meantime, in the greater Minneapolis, St. Paul area, hopefully.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you've seen her here, Pony, Kathie Hixon-Smith on Bass Musician Magazine.